Sandra, you want to call the roll, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Craig Curtis as designee for Secretary Chaudhry.
Present.
Mr. Darrenberg is present. Vice Chair
Present.
Everhart, present. Chuck Boyd as designee for Secretary Flora.
Present.
Mr. Kathari is absent. Ms. Lala is present. Krishna Talur as designee for Dr. Wright.
Present.
And Mr. Chair.
Here, thank you. We don't have any public comments, so let's move to the Executive Director's report. Alex?
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and members of the Commission. It's great to see you this morning. First, for today's meeting, we have received email, but not an expected written comment from Ms. Allison Mendoza Walters, a Prince George's County parent, regarding the fire last month in a classroom in the Cesar Chavez Dual Spanish Immersion Elementary School in Hyattsville. The fire occurred on a Sunday and no one was injured. Since the event, Prince George's County Public Schools has tested the air quality in multiple locations within the school and found all of the VOCs, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and particulates to be comfortably below industry standard levels and generally lower than ambient levels outside the facility. Mrs. Mendoza Walters urged the Commission in her email to approve the pending request from Prince George's County Public Schools for about $719,000 in CIP funds for a windows, doors, exterior improvement project at that school. I appreciate very much Ms. Mendoza Walters' effort to highlight the need at this school, which was originally built in 1954, currently has an FCI or facility condition index of 75%, which means it is in a very depleted condition. IAC staff have recommended to you that this project funding request be approved as part of the 100% CIP recommendations in item 3 of your agenda today. We're close to having completion with our departmental bill from this legislative session, which includes important updates to our statutes and carries items for MSDE and DGS as well. So we're awaiting word on when the bill will be signed by Governor Moore, and whenever that takes place, our partner agency staff from MSDE and DGS and I will be there to witness Governor Moore signing the bill and to thank him for his support for the IAC and the work that we do to implement the content, the work that we do on behalf of the state of Maryland. Once the bill has been signed, the IAC staff will work to implement the contents of the bill by communicating them to the school districts, hopefully at our upcoming meeting with the school district facility staff in 2 weeks, and also by advancing incoming IAC agendas, the changes to IAC regulations, and our administrative procedures guide that the bill requires. Next, with regard to the fiscal year 2027 state budget, including appropriations for the IAC's capital grant programs, I mentioned last month that Governor Moore's signature on the budget bills in mid-April was very helpful to the IAC because it gave our staff a reasonable span of time in which to make the required adjustments to the staff recommendations for the CIP and share them first with the LEAs and then with you last week for your review in advance of this meeting. I'm pleased to report that this year's CIP process has been smoother than perhaps any in recent memory, due in part to good overall collaboration and effort on the part of our LEA partners. I thank them for that, and a huge amount of first-rate work on the part of the IAC staff. I want to thank our staff explicitly today for having gone the extra mile while being short a few hands due to a couple of key vacancies. Funding school construction projects involves a lot of work at both the local and state levels. This year, IAC staff evaluated 161 funding requests, asking for a total of $754 million in state funding support. However, because the IAC has only $430 million in prior year and budgeted fiscal 27 appropriations to award at this time, many project funding requests cannot be granted, even though many of those projects are in fact eligible for state funding participation. This is not to say that the requested 754 million reflects all of the need out there. It does not. Because we know that even with the local capital budgets totaling about $1.25 billion in last fiscal year, the county funding for school capital projects is not sufficient to provide the local share required for all of the capital maintenance and capital renewal projects that are needed to maintain good school facility conditions. Using general industry standards for capital spending to maintain the existing facilities in Maryland, and I'm referring to industry standards that assume that there is no significant backlogs of deferred maintenance, which in fact do exist in all the LEAs. The LEA should be spending about $2.5 billion per year in capital funds. But it appears that actual spending levels currently are about $1 billion per year short of that level. The source of the needed additional funds is not clear and will not be decided by the IAC. But it is clear that additional funds are needed and very soon. Over the recent year, I've heard from a growing number of school districts that they are unable to fully fund their most urgent projects due to a shortage of funding, both local and state. They've exhausted one-time measures available to them, deferred everything they could reasonably defer, and still cannot close the gap with the resources provided. They are broadcasting the sound of the alarm bell, and I'm working to serve as a repeater of their broadcast signal, conveying the data about the unmet needs and the future costs of failing to provide and properly maintain the buildings in which our teachers are trying to teach and our students are trying to learn. I will conclude my comments today by stating my deep appreciation to the General Assembly and to Governor Moore for having maintained the appropriations for school construction, at least at the level we had last year, without any cuts. This has allowed you as a commission to approve awards today at a level that supports what we projected and communicated to the school district, so we're at least delivering what we said we hoped to deliver. But this doesn't really hold the line when all the needs are considered, and it certainly won't stop the downward slide in condition that virtually every LEA is facing in its facilities over time. I look forward to working over the coming months with Maryland school districts, county governments, and state leaders to map a course to educational sufficiency and fiscal sustainability of Maryland's school facilities. This concludes my executive director's report for today, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Alex? As we've said during the winter, Alex particularly, we have communicated the shortfalls in needs to legislative leaders at our briefings. So we've made them aware of the situation that the counties are facing. Alex, that work group that we had 3 or 4 years ago, is that going to meet again this summer for the FCI? And
Mr. Chair, it's unclear. That appears to need a rescheduling, both under the law and in terms of what was communicated from General Assembly leadership to the IAC in previous years. We don't have any more details about when that might be rescheduled.
Okay.
Certainly, the adoption of weights for the Maryland Condition Index, which will support the COP Priority Fund in coming years, is still needed. And I would hope that that is something that can get done in the coming year or so, because that will greatly support the effectiveness of the IAC in addressing the most urgent needs out there in the school facilities across the state.
The Prince George's County fire situation, did you say that's included in item 3 below?
Yes, the recommendations for the funding that Prince George's County Schools requested for that school building are included in the recommendations, yes.
Any other questions for Alex? Consent, Ms. Eberhardt.
Yes. Good morning.
Good morning.
Comptroller Lehrman had put together a study of addressing the exact issue that you were talking about. Do you know what the status of that is? Is it moving forward? Has it gone to the legislature?
So, Comptroller Learman's report was one of a number of deep dive reports into significant cost drivers facing the state. There quite a kind of a catalog of things that she had her staff look into in depth. And what she said in her report really echoed a lot of the information that the IAC has been making available to leadership and to the public as well. I think there's very much alignment between what we, the comptroller, have been seeing and similar statements of the need. That was sort of the role of that report. It wasn't a report done in order to necessarily lead to another next step. It was just the comptroller's choice to do, to do one of her deep dive reports on school construction funding. So I don't know that there's necessarily any next step to come after it. I think what will happen is the information she reported and the information that the IAC is reporting continually will be factored into next legislative session when it comes to budget time to fund the appropriations for our programs.
Thank you.
Hey, Alex, what percentage, is there a recommended percentage of a LEA's budget that should be spent on maintenance?
So that's a great question, Mr. Chair. I was talking in my comments mostly about capital side, but you're right. Maintenance is the other key piece of investing in facilities over the long haul. And there's no national standard exactly, but there's an industry guideline of about 3% per year of the value of the facilities should be spent on operations and maintenance. That comes from the National Council on School Facilities and others who have been publicizing the shortfall nationally in investment in school facilities maintenance. In addition, there's at least one state out there that requires that its school districts spend a certain percentage of their operating budgets on facilities maintenance and operation. That is Arkansas, which has done that for a good 20 years and has seen significant improvements in its school facilities condition as a result of that consistent level of annual support to facilities maintenance. They've gotten significant benefits from that policy in Arkansas.
3% from who pays that?
So it's a requirement that the school districts each spend at least 9% of their operating budget on facilities maintenance and operation, including utilities.
How do our LEAs do?
They're averaging much lower than that.
I understand, but is it 3%?
It depends. It's really ranges across the board. The average is more around 5 or 6%.
Okay.
At the best. So we're as a state, we're very much below what has been getting results in other places.
Okay. All right. Consent agenda. Alex, anything in there we should
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This month's consent agenda includes contract awards and revisions, extensions granted in the past 45 days, corrections to a reversion, a couple more reversions for 2 counties, and some facility status changes. I would just note this month is the first month of processing requests for Baltimore City on facility status changes and disposals in some time, because the state has received all outstanding bond debt and property transfer agreements from Baltimore City that had been open and pending. I'm very, very happy to report that the city is now has cleared its arrears, and we are moving forward with these approvals once again.
This is L you're referring to particularly specifically?
Yes, Patapsco is the one that's urgently needed to support redevelopment in the city.
Any questions on the consent agenda? Someone like to make a motion that we approve the consent agenda? Ms. Lawler makes a motion. Mr. Derenberg seconds. All in favor, say aye. Raise your hands. Any opposed? Thank you. Item 3, FY 2027 100% Capital Improvement Program recommendations. Rabia.
Actually, Mr. Chair, I'm going to give a quick introduction
Okay.
and then hand it over to Arabia. So thank you. In my report this morning, I began the introduction to this year's staff recommendations to you by thanking the staff for the hundreds of hours of work that went into crafting what I believe is the best possible deployment of the limited state capital appropriations provided to the IAC for fiscal 2027. I also noted the shortfall that's inherent in the current level of appropriations. The recommendations in front of you today reach for the maximum improvements in school facilities that the staff and I believe can be reached from where we collectively stand today. I thank you for the review and scrutiny that you've provided, and I request your approval of these recommended awards so that the school districts can proceed to execute the work without delay. I will now ask Arabia to provide the detailed summary of this set of recommendations and to read the motion.
Okay. Thank you, Alex. And good morning, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and members of the Commission. Consistent with Education Article 5-304B5 of the Annotated Code of Maryland, IAC staff are pleased to present for your approval the final fiscal year 2027 Capital Improvement Program. These proposals remain unwaveringly committed to the IAC's core mission, ensuring that every student in Maryland has access to an educationally sufficient learning environment. The proposal before you today includes new approvals as well as updates to the previous 75% and 90% CIP approvals and recommendations in December and February. These adjustments reflect the final authorized FY 2027 CIP budget, along with funding from the IAC's various reserve fund accounts. The combination of all these funding sources results in a total recommended award of $430 million, of which $428 million is earmarked for specific school construction projects, while $1,250,000 is reserved for future allocation toward critical needs and potential out-of-cycle requests. Eligibility of these awards was determined through a rigorous evaluation process. Our analysis included a review of state future funding commitments, the total cost of ownership of facilities, and comprehensive assessments of project scopes, enrollment projections, and project status. To facilitate and alleviate some of the pressures associated with the IAC agenda publication process and to meet website accessibility requirements, the CIP summary and project details recommendations beginning on page 28 included in the meeting agenda have been condensed. However, the comprehensive version of these recommendations, which indicates the project status, the project type, and request types, and whether state approval is being recommended for planning, project development and design services, and/or construction funding, can be accessed through the supplemental Excel document included on the IAC website. The IAC staff have included detailed notes at the bottom of the agenda for your review. The capital project managers are available to address any project-specific questions. Mr. Chair, I can now read the motion, which is to approve the fiscal year 2027 Capital Improvement Program, including revisions to the 75% approval and 90% recommendations as presented in this item and in the accompanying project details Excel file posted to the IAC's website. for a total award of $430,042,211, including $428,792,211 for school construction projects and $1,250,000 of new authorization held in reserve. Further, to authorize the IAC staff to make adjustments to awards and project maximum state awards based on calculation of the project's eligible funding amount to avoid the over or underfunding of a project.
Thank you, Arabia. Madam Vice Chair, the chair's computer just crashed. And so I need to ask you to take over chairing the meeting. So if you can come off of mute and let's double check your audio. Going to have to ask you to step in and ask for a motion on this. Oh, you're still muted, Miss Eberhardt.
Unmute. Okay.
There we go. Yes,
Okay,
we can hear
good.
you now.
Okay,
Great.
we're back. Okay. Do I have a motion on this recommendation? Approved. Second.
Okay.
Any comments? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Approved. Thank you.
Thank
Next
you.
item.
Okay. The next item is item 4, project cancellation and maximum state award increase for Washington County Public Schools. Lisa?
Good morning, Madam Vice Chair and members of the Commission. On April 16th, 2026, Washington County Public Schools informed IAC staff that bids received for the Boonesboro High School HVAC replacement project came in higher than anticipated. This project was originally estimated in the fall of 2024, and since that time, the market has seen increased costs for equipment and labor associated with HVAC projects. WCPS has requested an increase to the maximum state award to support the higher project costs. An additional $3,009,500 is needed to increase the maximum state award. Per Comar 14390208B, the IAC may increase the maximum state award for a systemic renovation project when the LEA submits the bid tabulation for the project, provides documentation of the justifications required by Comar, and the IAC determines the requested scope of work is eligible for state funding and the scope of work and associated costs are reasonable. Staff of the IAC have reviewed the bid tab and find the request is compliant with requirements. As such, we recommend approval of the LEA's request. In order to make funding available, WCPS is also requesting to rescind the HVAC project at Hancock Elementary School that received funding through the FY 2026 CIP totaling $2,490,000. WCPS believes this is the best way to move forward to complete the much-needed HVAC project at Boonesboro High within state and local funding constraints. WCPS intends to request the funding approval in a future CIP for Hancock Elementary. I will now read the motion, which is to approve the rescission of the Washington County Public Schools FY 2026 Capital Improvement Program Hancock Elementary HVAC Replacement Project totaling $2,490,000 and to transfer the funds to the LEA's reserve account and to increase the maximum state award for the Boonesboro High HVAC replacement project from $7,262,500 to $10,272,000 in accordance with Comar 14390208B and to transfer $3,009,500 from the LEA's reserve account to fund the FY 2025 Capital Improvement Program project.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Lisa. Sorry.
Are
Thank
you back, Ed?
Yeah,
Okay,
thank you.
Okay.
I have no idea what happened, but I went blank. I appreciate
that
your
does happen.
patience.
Okay.
Okay.
Purposes of discussion, do I hear a motion, a support for this motion? Mr. Derenberg makes a motion, Ms. Everhart seconds. Any discussion? Okay. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Raise your hands. Any opposed? Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I might, just
Yes.
for your understanding, while you were logging back in, Vice Chair Eberhardt did conduct the motion on item 3 CIP, and it was approved.
Good. Thank you. Thank you again, Linda. Item number 4. No, 5. Administrative Procedure Guide Revisions, Departmental Bill. Victoria?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and members of the Commission. The presented document on page 35 identifies several revisions to the APG that will ensure consistency with the IAC's departmental bill, which altered some of the language and procedures of the IAC and will provide clarification on a number of processes. There's a summary of the changes on page 34 of your agenda, many of which were discussed at prior IAC meetings as well. I'll briefly give a summary of the main changes being made to the APG as a result of the departmental bill. In section 2, there were some small changes that clarified the process for certain types of facility status changes. And the changes in section 3 to the circumstances when design review by state superintendent is required, and increasing the cost threshold for said design reviews and change order approvals by the state superintendent. Lastly, there were a few small changes that are not a result of the departmental, but instead are slight changes to the processes, including specifying when ACH is required instead of checks being issued to LEAs or vendors, and adding travel time as a specific criteria to consider when evaluating adjacent schools. I will now read the motion, which is to approve amendments to the IAC's Administrative Procedures Guide as presented, contingent upon the signature of Senate Bill 48 by Governor Moore.
Thank you, Victoria. For purposes of discussion, do I hear a motion? Krishna makes a motion, Ms. Everhart seconds. Any discussion on this motion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Raise your hands.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Victoria. Number 6, legislative session presentation. Victoria and Cassandra.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Hannah's going to run some slides for us. So thank you, Hannah. We can go ahead and move to the first content slide. This slide, Mr. Chair, is on page 54 of your agenda. Here you'll see the funds appropriated to the IAC for its capital programs. First, $27 million was awarded for the Prince George's P3 program. This comes from the Education Trust Fund and is a recurring annual amount for the life of the P3 agreement. Next is the Priority Fund, which has a statutorily required amount of $70 million per year. So this is consistent with that requirement. The Public School Construction Program, which we typically call the Capital Improvement Program, was appropriated $300 million in GO bonds, which you already know because you very efficiently approved that money in item 3. The Non-Public Aging Schools Program received $5 million total. This program is interesting because it's not statutorily required. It exists only so long as it continues to be put in the budget each year, but it has been supported by the governor and the General Assembly for a little over a decade. We most often see the program awarded at $3.5 million per year, but there have been a few years where that amount varied. This year it increased to $5 million, but with a special directive that the additional $1.5 million be distributed to Woodbourne School, which is in Baltimore City. Next is the Supplemental Capital Grant Program, which we also refer to as the Enrollment Growth and Relocatable Classroom Program, or EGRC. This program is statutorily required to be funded at $80 million per year, and as you can see, it was. We also received a $10 million appropriation for the School Safety Grant Program. It's worth noting that this is the IAC's only grant program that utilizes operating rather than capital funds. That means that the funds have to be encumbered in FY 2027 and that the unencumbered funds revert at the end of the year. It also creates a little more flexibility in the kinds of components that can be funded from this source. Last but not least, there is just under $19 million in strategic energy investment funds. These funds are managed by the Maryland Energy Administration and are special funds rather than traditional GO bonds. This is the first time that the IAC has dealt with this funding source, so we're starting to explore those requirements, and we'll have more information for you soon. So at an overall budget level, the appropriation for the IAC's programs look exactly like we anticipated at the beginning of the budget cycle. Moving on to slide 3, you'll see that there were some very impactful changes to 2 of our funding programs that I want to review before we move on. First is the Priority Fund. The fund is supposed to eventually utilize data from the statewide facilities assessment in order to target the schools most in need of improvements. But as we are working out the methodology for doing so in conjunction with the work group that you mentioned earlier, Mr. Chair, statute required that for FY 2027, the funds go to projects that fund the most severe issues in school facilities. Those projects would be very similar to those that we saw over the last several years through the Healthy School Facility Fund, which does sunset at the end of FY 26. The way the statute is written, those funds would be competitive and would go to the highest need regardless of LEA. The General Assembly in the budget bill this year added language that earmarked those funds in specific amounts for 7 LEAs. So you can see those LEAs and their corresponding amounts listed in this slide on page 55 of the agenda. The designated amounts sum to 69 out of a total $70 million program. The remaining 17 jurisdictions are appropriated the last 1 million of that program. Since this is a competitive program, we expect that only 1 project will be able to be funded among the 17 remaining LEAs. And that will be whatever project is submitted that demonstrates the most need as described by the prioritization that will be adopted by the Commission and the program procedures. Next, I want to talk a little bit about the changes to the EGRC distribution. Statute currently requires that the first 40 million of EGRC be awarded to eligible LEAs proportionally based upon their student enrollment. Any funding over the first 40 million is required to be distributed based upon that LEA's proportional share of enrollment growth above the statewide average. The budget bill changed the distribution, and instead, 4.5 million was carved out right off the top for the county with the greatest percentage of enrollment growth, which is Frederick County. Then the amount of funding that is distributed based upon enrollment was increased from 40 million to 57.5 million, which means that the remaining 18 million is distributed based upon enrollment growth above the statewide average. Next, I'll talk about the IAC's operating budget. In order to manage all of these programs that we just talked about, the IAC was appropriated an operating budget of 8.7 million, which is around 1.7% of the capital that we were awarded this year. It's worth noting that the projects are rarely, if ever, complete in 1 year, so the value of projects that we're overseeing at any given point in time is several years' worth of capital. And it would reduce our percentage of operating costs if we were to consider the amount that's active to a teeny tiny amount. In order to do this work, we have a total of 44 full-time staff, and out of our entire operating budget, the vast majority is for personnel, over 80%. We really are an agency that is successful based upon our people, and I'd like to take a minute, Mr. Chair, to note that the IAC staff are the most talented and dedicated people that I've ever had the pleasure to work with. And I think that really shows given the amount and the quality of work that we are able to do with this proportionally very small operating budget. Just as a matter of interest, the remaining 19% of our operating budget, 14% is for contractual commitments, primarily for the business management system and the other technical systems that we utilize, which help to keep us efficient. 3% is for rent and 1% is for travel, mostly for the over 500 assessments that our assessors conduct at school facilities each year, both to measure the condition and educational sufficiency of those facilities and also to measure the maintenance effectiveness of those facilities. With that, Mr. Chair, I will turn it back over to Victoria, who will talk about other legislation of note that came out of the 2026 session.
Good morning again.
Good
The
morning.
IAC's departmental bill for this year, Senate Bill 48 or House Bill 233, is anticipated to be signed later this month by the governor. The bill makes a number of administrative changes and revisions to clarify language and procedures to align with current IAC practices, as I mentioned earlier. As we previously discussed, the bill at prior IAC meetings and what it includes specifically, I won't go into too much detail on everything that it does, but it is worth noting that the bill does remove the requirement that you all approve the 75% CIP in December, and instead requires that the IAC provide 3 CIP status reports for LEAs and county governments in November, December, and January. The IAC will approve preliminary recommendations of 90% of the governor's submitted budget in February. This is beneficial as it provides the same information to our stakeholders, but without the confusion of official IAC approval for funds that may not come to fruition or might be modified by the General Assembly during the budget process. The changes to the EGRC program this year are a great example because the CIP approved in item 3 had to modify the December approval in order to be consistent with the allocation changes to EGRC included in the budget bill. Next slide. House Bill 854 has also not yet been signed by the governor, but if it is, it will create a new IAC administered funding program, specifically for non-public placement schools, which would be funded starting in fiscal year 2028. Language of the bill specifies intent for the governor to appropriate a minimum of $5 million to the program each year, and the program would fund facility renovations and improvements to both classrooms and school facilities, as well as on-site residential buildings. IAC staff anticipate working closely with our partners at MSDE as they hold information on these facilities and if they meet eligibility requirements for funding and have existing relationships with currently operating non-public placement schools. Next slide. House Bill 1430, if signed by the governor, will create another new funding program. This one is specifically for charter school facilities that will provide a funding source to use for facilities improvements, debt service, or lease costs. The bill requires IAC staff to draft procedures, manage the program, and distribute funds directly to charter schools. And funding for the program would begin in fiscal year 2028 and mandates an appropriation of $200 per student, which IAC staff currently estimate to be just under $5 million total. Prior to that, IAC staff will be requesting additional staffing for the creation and management of this program, as well as the program created by the prior mentioned bill, House Bill 854, and estimate that initial procedures for the program will be brought to the IAC at the start of the first funded fiscal year. Next slide. House Bill 311 or Senate Bill 507 is a bill that requires local school districts to identify any accessibility issues when performing their regular safety evaluations. These evaluations are already being conducted and submitted to the Maryland Center for School Safety, but the bill would add a requirement for the identification of inaccessible entrances and exits. We anticipate minimal information will be required from the IAC, as MCSS is the agency responsible for manning these evaluations presently. However, in future years, the IAC may see a greater number of funding requests for exterior door projects to remediate any ADA non-compliance, as these areas are identified by local school systems. Next slide. And then I'll just briefly mention a few other enrolled bills that the IAC was asked to provide fiscal impact statements on, but have minimal to no impact on the IAC. Senate Bill 833 permits Queen Anne's County to utilize revenue collected from development impact fees for the purpose of school construction, which is adding just another permitted use to the restricted uses of these fees. House Bill 870 requires local entities to inform the Department of the Environment when a building over 35,000 square feet applies for a building permit application. The original draft of this bill had exempted schools from this requirement, but it was revised prior to being enrolled to include school facilities. And Senate Bill 646 prohibits LEAs from entering into contracts containing certain types of extrajudicial dispute resolution clauses, such as binding arbitration. And that would be all of the bills that we provided fiscal impact statements on. And it concludes our presentation for the 2026 legislative session, and we'd be happy to discuss any bills in more detail or answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Victoria. Mr. Derenberg.
Just going back to the EGRC, are the relocatable trailers eliminated from that funding now? What?
They are not, Mr. Chair. The
Okay.
statute did not change the requirements for eligibility.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Victoria and Cassandra? I can't see the everybody, so if you have a question, speak up. Back to the comments earlier by Cassandra, I just wanted to support what she said about the incredible work that the staff does. It's amazing how much pressure is on the small number of people to produce all that they do. So please, Alex and Cassandra, pass on our gratitude to everyone for their efforts. It's really significant. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Absolutely will do.
Is there anything else before we talk about announcements I want to bring up? It's not really an announcement, but once again, it's time for the evaluation of our executive director. And Ms. Eberhardt, do you want to describe what we're going to do?
Let me get unmute. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. What we've done in the past is form a subcommittee, and that committee will remain the same. And we will then go through our evaluation process and then make recommendations to the total commission, and then come back to you in the summer with our final recommendation. We will be asking for input from all of the stakeholders across the state to send us any information about your evaluation of the executive director. And will be talking with elected officials to make sure that what we see is exactly what's happening across the state as we have in the past. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. You do a great job with that. Any other announcements anyone wants to make? What month, Alex, do we make or changing the date of the meeting? Is it August?
In July, we will meet
July?
in the third week it'll be the 16th instead of the 9th in July.
In July, okay.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other announcements anyone wants to make? Do I hear a motion that we adjourn? Mr. Curtis makes a motion, Ms. Eberhardt seconds. All in favor, say aye. Okay.